We are back with Mercedes now. She has a second opinion. Mercedes, a different take on this subject now.
Absolutely. We're joined now by Shimon Fogel. He's the CEO of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. You had an opportunity to listen to our interview with Dr. Tibi. He said something fairly controversial, that Canadian companies shouldn't buy from towns that are Israeli settlements. How do you feel about that?
Well, before addressing your question, I'll just offer a comment about Dr. Tibi. I mean, Ahmad Tibi is a fascinating individual. Frankly, for me, he's a poster boy for Israel. Here you have an Arab who's not just critical of the state, in many respects is seeking to undermine the legitimacy of Israel as a Jewish state, the only democracy in the region, educated in Israel, serving in Israel's parliament. It's an incredible validation of all that we believe brings Canada and Israel together in terms of shared values and commitments to openness and democracy. I can't say that I'm not troubled by suggestions that a member of the Israeli Knesset would not just endorse but actively support and promote a tactic that is aimed at delegitimizing the state of Israel. And that's what the boycott...
And by that you mean the boycott.
So the boycott, the divestment, you know, that whole package of efforts that have been undertaken by not pro-Palestinian forces, but rather by anti-Israel forces, is really only aimed at delegitimizing Israel within the international community. Settlements are, to be sure, an issue that is difficult, that is going to require resolution as they move forward in a peace process, but they're not new. They were there during the Oslo process. They were there in all subsequent interim agreements that were reached. It's an issue just like refugees, the status of Jerusalem, and so forth, that will have to achieve some kind of reconciliation between the two. But to artificially divide between this is a legitimate Israel, this is illegitimate Israel, is something that we find terribly problematic.
Well, and fair to say that there's a range of opinions, even within Israeli politics, about the settlements. A range within the different parties on what they want to see, whether they want to continue them, end them. It's not that there's particularly a one view that comes out of Israel on that.
No, I mean, Israel is by no means a monolithic state with one particular view. And you can find Israeli Jews who will articulate the same general principles in terms of a vision of resolution of the conflict that are articulated by Ahmad Tibi. The distinction, however, is that when one endorses an initiative that clearly has as its objective, the stated objective, undermining the credibility and the legitimacy of the Jewish state, then it's no longer about advancing a particular perspective. It's really about an entirely different agenda. And the irony is that this is the individual educated in Israel. He's a physician, serving in the parliament, as you noted, deputy speaker of the Israeli parliament, who's come to Canada to speak at an event called the Nakba, which is Arabic for catastrophe, which is the way they mark the creation of the Jewish state after 2,000 years of exile. It's just very difficult for us, not just emotionally, but intellectually, to reconcile how you move from that kind of orientation to one of reconciliation and peace.
Well, Shimon, I think it is remarkable, and that's part of why we wanted to talk to Dr. Tibi, that you have this man who used to be an advisor to Yasser Arafat, now as an Israeli MK. It's not something most Canadians would think of, although I guess perhaps there's sometimes similarities to our Bloc Québécois in terms of incorporating that with democracy. But I wanted to ask you about the Israel-Canada relationship as well. It's changed significantly in recent years in terms of Stephen Harper coming into power, a much closer relationship. Where do you see the future of that going?
So I think that the expression of support and shared purpose that the Harper government has articulated over the last number of years has created a new platform for Israel and Canada to move forward in a mutually beneficial way on a whole range of issues. There's a lot of focus on innovation and what each can contribute and complement to the other in terms of maintaining that cutting-edge niche that both countries have been able to secure. There are a whole host of social policy, healthcare issues, agriculture, some real challenges that we face simply as societies in a very uncertain economy, where the collaboration between the two has been able to advance the interests of both countries. And I think that one of the important achievements of the Harper government's support for Israel has been to be able to move beyond politics as an issue of tension between the two to a venue where they are now focused on the constructive way forward to the benefit of both.
Shimon, thank you very much for joining us. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for right now. Certainly not everything there is to be said about Israel, Amanda and Todd, but an interesting exploration with two different voices today, hopefully.
We were hearing him talk about the Canada-Israeli relationship. What's the next step in that relationship?
Well, you'll remember that we just had the Israeli Prime Minister visit. Next up is the President. He's coming to Canada on May the 6th, and that's Shimon Peres. So I'm sure we'll be covering that and hear a lot more about this debate in the Middle East then.
All right, CTV's Mercedes Stephenson. Thanks, Mercedes.
Thank you.